All right, here to talk with us about that and more as the NBA silly season is kind of slowing down. But Keith Smith, contributor for Yahoo Sports NBA, Real GM, he joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline, try to make a little sense of everything that has happened over the last 72 hours or so, Keith. And, I don't know, which move to you was the most eye-opening wow move of them all?
The D'Angelo Russell sign and trade to the Warriors, because that one came completely out of nowhere. Everything else we had heard some rumblings of a little bit and things like that, but that one was one. No one expected that. We weren't at all prepared for, that to happen, for the Warriors to go in that direction, that to be where Russell wanted to be and those kind of things. So that one's the one that, for me, was like, oh, where did this come from?
Well, we had a lot of other things, too. That one, yes, that was a late-nighter, too. It was kind of like, oh, by the way, D'Angelo Russell's getting traded to Golden State, and he's out there on the West Coast. But in the East, there's a lot of changes, and a lot of them happen right in our backyard in Philadelphia. So let's kind of start with what happened with Jimmy Butler. Last week when we talked, there was this talk about him, in Houston. And then all of a sudden, it shifted from Houston to Miami, and just like that, he was a member of the Heat. Now, how did he get to the Heat? Did the Sixers not want him back, or did he not want to be in Philly?
Yeah, it sounds like it was a little bit of both there. It sounds like he was open to returning, but once they made it clear they were not going to go to the full 5-year max is what it sounds like. Both sides decided then let's look at something different. When we started hearing all this buzz of, maybe the Rockets, maybe the Heat, where he eventually landed, which are sign and trade destinations, you can start to say there might be something there, because that's not as simple as picking a team with cap space and signing with them. There's a lot of things you got to work on there. So I think it's going to be really, interesting to see, when those details officially come out, because they always do. And once we get that final word of, this is what's happening, or what happened rather, that will be, some story.
Yeah. So they get Josh Richardson back in return in the deal. Good return, best you can get. What did you think of Elton Brand getting Richardson back?
Yeah, no, for a guy who didn't want to be there, getting a guy like Josh Richardson is huge. He's a really, really good player. He's he's probably more of a two guard than anything else, but he can handle the ball enough to run some of the point. He can defend the 2-3 position very well. He can even defend some at the one, some of the bigger ones. I would assume he's probably going to get a lot of the point guard duties over the next year or so. So it's going to be really a nice pickup for Philadelphia. They're just going to look different. That's the easiest way I can put it. They're not going to look anything like what they looked like at the beginning of last year, then at the end of last year after the trade. They're going to look different, but it's going to be really a nice pickup to get Richardson.
Okay, they're going to look different because they now have Al Horford as well. Horford well, covered the Celtics pretty closely. Do you like the fit of Horford with Embiid, number one, and do you like the contract that they end up giving him? Is that going to be a deal? Because a lot of people are saying, I'm one of them. I might not have given Jimmy the 4th or 5th year. Like, that's a lot of money for a guy in his mid-30s. But then the people would say, but you're willing to give it to Horford. I feel like Horford's a different type of player, that his age will not cause him to significantly slip. What do you think?
Yeah, his game is going to age pretty well. He's just a very different kind of player. Perimeter players have a hard time because once it goes, it goes. They don't get that back. But Horford has been a standstill jump shooter for several years. He's been a guy who is, a very good passer from out there. His defense will probably start to slip some. That's something we'll see happen. But I think he's going to be a fantastic fit for the 76ers for a lot of reasons. One, he is absolutely going to be a respected, grown-up veteran in that room. I think Joel Embiid spending, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, however long Horford is there with him is going to be huge for his career. Then I think when you look at it from the on-court impact, he's going to be really good as far as a second distributor up top. He's a good defender. They're going to be really tough to score on. And then the other impact he's going to have as well is now you could really spot both Horford. He's a guy who should probably only play 60 to 65 games at most. Embiid probably 65, 70 games. Now you can really spot those two guys without having to take a huge downgrade, which is something that the Sixers had last year whenever Embiid's at.
Biggest question around here, Keith, has been Butler took the big shots. Do they have a shot maker when the clock's running down in the big games? Forget, Tuesday night in February against Charlotte. Who does it on the bright lights in Toronto in Game 7?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I think you're banking on that might having to be Tobias Harris. I think he is the guy who you are going to say, hey, give me the ball, and we paid you the near max money, and you're now the highest paid guy on the team. Go get it done for us. And we're going to find out whether he can or not real quick.
Talk with Keith Smith at Keith Smith NBA on Twitter. Sixers made a lot of moves. They were one of the teams that were very active, both making moves, trades, signings, comings, goings. They lost J.J. Redick. I know because of all the things that are happening there. Is that going to be something that somewhere during some losing streak or some little down period we're like, you know what, they're missing Redick?
Yeah, that could be one of the kind of bigger losses. I know it seems on its face like that should be Jimmy Butler, but Redick was so important to them. A career high in scoring last year, which is unheard of for a guy his age. Just so much of the offense was based around his unique talents and skill sets, the things he did, and that's really irreplaceable. Now all those shooters have come off the market. Anybody you could have gotten to do any kind of Redick impersonation are even gone. So that's going to be tough. They're going to have to rework some things. They're going to have to hope Richardson showed a lot of promise as a improved shooter last year, that's real and that's going to continue, because right now that's probably the single biggest hole on the team is lack of shooting.
Yeah, Ben Simmons got this max super, the rookie max yesterday. He hasn't accepted it yet. Number one, that hasn't been done, but all expectations. Those guys typically do not say no to that, but that's an interesting one because there has been some murmurs that Ben might be have his eyes elsewhere. But if he takes that deal, he's committed here to 5 more years. So how do you think Ben Simmons fits in? Because there was a lot of talk, Keith, about maybe Ben wasn't too happy with his role when Butler was here, kind of being in that dunker position. I know this is a lot on him not having a shot, but how do you see Ben Simmons fitting in with Richardson and Al Horford and Embiid and Tobias?
Yeah, I think what you're going to find with Simmons is he's going to be a fantastic fit, especially with Horford. You're going to be able to get a lot of mileage out of actions with those two as ball handlers and passers. I think Simmons, one of the challenges was when he gave the ball up last year, it wasn't coming back to him. He gives the ball up to Horford. Horford will find him on cuts, and Brett Brown's going to have to get creative and draw some things up that uses the skill sets of those guys really well. But I think Horford is we all focus on Nikola Jokic as we should as the best passing big man, but Al Horford's not far off that. He is a phenomenal passer, and allowing Simmons to throw the ball to him and then run off some stuff, Horford will find him for easy buckets inside. And that's going to be probably a pretty big staple of the offense is the while it's a little non-traditional, but it's going to be the big pick and rolls, the big inside outside passing and those kind of things.
Yeah, we saw when the Sixers played the Celtics, Horford pick and popping and pick and rolling them to death at the top of the key. And a lot of times, a lot of Sixer fans say, why is Embiid in that spot? It would seem that with Horford at the top of the key, you don't need to bring Embiid to start the offense at the top of the key as much anymore.
Correct. Yeah, I think those plays where you have Embiid holding it out there for 12, 13, 14 seconds of the shot clock and then launching the ill-advised jump shot, I think those are probably going to be gone. I'd be pretty shocked if those make a reappearance in the offense. I think they're going to move forward to, getting him he'll either be a much more traditional trailing jump shooter or straight pick and pop jump shooter, or he's going to be spending a lot of time getting his stuff inside.
Okay, the next question would be then, what kind of impact did Horford have on Boston in terms of them? They've basically swapped out Kyrie and Horford for Enes Kanter and Kemba Walker. Now, I'm a big Kemba guy, and I like that move. I don't know that I like the trade-off from Horford to Kanter defensively for sure, but totally just a different look there. But are they better because of Kemba and then getting more from Tatum? Or do you look at this team as a little bit of a drop-off?
Yeah, so this is what's going to be interesting now with the Celtics is I think everything's going to fit a little bit better. Now, they wanted Al Horford back. They were willing to do what they needed to do to arrange a series of signing trades to be able to re-sign him and bring him back to Boston, but they weren't going to meet the number that Philly put out there. And at this point in his career, good for Al Horford for saying, no, hey, I want my $100 million or pretty darn near close to it, and I'm going to go get it. So Boston pivots here, and I don't think Walker and Irving are going to be any sort of drop off. I think Irving is a better player in a vacuum, but fit really matters. Fran Fraschilla said it on Twitter. Walker will show up every day with a smile on his face and ready to work, and that's going to have a huge influence on these guys. I think Enes Kanter's a nice bounce back, very different player from Horford. He doesn't really have any range, but he's a much better rebounder. He's a much more physical player inside. He's not the defender Horford is, so Boston's going to have to scheme around that, but they've had a lot of success. I mean, they had a lot of success with Tyler Zeller in the middle for a couple years there and made it work. They should be able to get that with Kanter. So whether they're better or not, it's probably a pretty open-ended question to this point. But what I think they're going to be is a much happier team, and sometimes that has huge impact. And I think the fits are just going to be better. Everyone should really know what their roles are going forward into this season.
All right, Keith, let's look at Milwaukee. They had the 1 seed. They lose Mirotic. Brogdon's gone. Do you look at Milwaukee as, the number 1 Eastern Conference team again as constructed?
Yeah, I think they're pretty close. A lot's going to depend on what we hear from Kawhi Leonard. If he stays in Toronto, it's probably them. But then it'll be Milwaukee and Philly is the next 2 right behind them. I think those are clearly the 3 best teams in the East. Should Kawhi stay in Toronto? If he doesn't, then I think it's Philly and Milwaukee battling it out as the 2 best teams in the conference. And Milwaukee, again, they're going to have to hope Wesley Matthews really has enough left in the tank to do a semi-good Brogdon replacement. It was really important that when Brogdon left that they were able to retain George Hill, because Brogdon was, in effect, their starting 2 guard and their backup point guard for a lot of last year. Now they're just going to be a very different team with that. Robin Lopez, good addition because they didn't have much in the form of the backup bigs last year. So the Bucks they're still going to be really, really good. Whether they're championship level good is probably going to depend on what they get out of Matthews, or does somebody else on the roster step forward a little bit unexpectedly.
All right, what about Brooklyn? They get Durant, who we don't think is going to play, but Kyrie's there. That was a team that, gave the Sixers a little bit of trouble, beat them in a game, and then, they were like a gnat for a couple of those games there. Is Brooklyn, with Kyrie basically swapping in for D'Angelo, are they a playoff team this year as constructed? And then where did we put them going forward after that?
Yeah, I think this year that's exactly how I'd put it. I think they are clearly a playoff team. They're still going to be really good, and that was, I think, part of the design for Kyrie and Kevin Durant was, this team, they can add both of us plus all this host of veteran role players to what's already a pretty good young list. They still have Karis LeVert. They still have Jared Allen, Spencer Dinwiddie. Those are 3 high-end rotation guys that everybody would like to have. So they've got enough depth. They should certainly be a playoff team. I think they're shy of being a title contender. It's going to be a lot on Kyrie to do a lot of the offensive creation and be that guy. But a year from now, you're hopeful that Kevin Durant is back and ready to go. And that's when I think Brooklyn is kind of looking at 1 more year of growth for the kids. Then we have KD comes in, and here we go. Now we're ready to contend.
Let me ask your opinion on, does KD sign with the Nets if they're still in New Jersey? Because we talk a lot about free agency and having money and being a destination. A lot of teams like the Sixers said, look, we can't get free agents, so we had to go a different route. Brooklyn couldn't go that route. They had no picks. But Brooklyn's a place that's cool. It's hip. People want to play there. But if they're playing at the Brendan Byrne Arena, I don't know that Kevin Durant plays there. So them moving to Brooklyn really facilitates this move, right?
Yeah, it definitely helps. No offense against the Meadowlands in New Jersey, but it's not Brooklyn. It's not, anywhere near New York City. The nice thing that the Nets have going for for them even over the Knicks is the Nets practice facility is right there. It's we're right there, right in the same neighborhood. These guys can live where they live and be there. With the Knicks, it's all the way out in Westchester, which is, a little bit of a hike to get out there for those guys or to get into the city for on game days and those kind of things. So I think for Brooklyn, they've got things, really set up. They're, a pretty progressive organization. They do a lot of forward-thinking things. They're not willing to gamble or not afraid to gamble, I should say. They're very willing to, take chances on stuff. And, they're one of those teams that a lot of free agents look at and say, yeah, I could see myself there. Now, they're obviously going to be capped out for the foreseeable future with these contracts. But, sometimes it's about making a trade for a guy and then keeping a guy and those kind of things. So Brooklyn is really well positioned.
Who are the Knicks now? I mean, when people in the NBA look at that franchise, we hear so much. Well, he wants to play in New York. Keith, no one signed with the Knicks since Stoudemire. I mean, nobody wants to play there, it seems like. So what have the Knicks become?
Yeah, they're now at this point, they're trying to find their way. They're trying to get back into this thing. I don't hate what they did necessarily. I think, they made some good veteran signings. You got to do something at some point to put talented guys around the host of kids that they have, because if those young guys just all they learn is, all right, we're going to lose, we're going to do this, and then it gets a little harder. We saw that with Philadelphia. They finally started to take steps forward when they added veterans like Redick and Amir Johnson, who, had won at the highest levels and could push this team forward. I think the Knicks, the guys they added are all fine. They're all essentially, other than Julius Randle, 1-year contracts because there's team options on the second year for everybody that makes them very tradable at the deadline if they want to. But it's just another disappointing year where they were gearing up is where we're going to be there, and here we are again. They're probably not a playoff team, and who knows what they are going forward.
Did they trade Porzingis thinking they're getting Durant?
Yeah, I think so. I think if not Durant, maybe Kyrie or maybe both. They made those moves, and if they openly talked about the flexibility. Now they never said the number, but we all knew if you talked to anybody from there, they all knew $70 million in cap space. Yeah. We've got enough cap space to go get 2 max free agents. Whether no matter who they were going to be, we're going to do this. They were. Remember, if we go back a couple months ago before the lottery, they were. If we win this lottery, we're going to have Kyrie, KD, and AD. And maybe that was the way it was going to go. We don't, we have no way of knowing, but it's, now it's come back. And the other thing we're seeing is free agents have made it very clear of, I don't know that I want to get involved there. It's just kind of a mess. It's, not seen as the best, stable, organization, those kind of things. And that's, really something that they've got to get figured out.
Indiana, Brogdon, Lamb, they're going to get Oladipo back. I mean, they lost Bogdanovich, tough move there, but you like what Indiana's done because they're always the team that nobody talks about. They hung in there all season. Even after Oladipo left, they ended up as the 5, but they hung right in there with everybody.
Yeah, they absolutely did. They did what they do. They just go out, find these guys a little maybe. They might have overpaid a little bit for Brogdon, but you have to get a guy who's a restricted free agent. But then they get a great deal on Jeremy Lamb. They stole T.J. Warren for nothing from the Phoenix Suns, who's probably going to come in and be their starting small forward, maybe even play some power forward. They're going to be good. And they're just, again, one of those teams, they kept their cap sheet pretty clean because, none of these, Brogdon's got the big contract, but it aligns very well with Oladipo and Turner. So they're just going to do what they do and be, a good, solid team. And, hopefully Brogdon steps forward. Oladipo gets back. He's at that all-NBA level again. I bet T.J. Warren plays the best basketball he's ever played, in the NBA there in Indiana. And I think, the Pacers are just, again, solid, good playoff team. If guys take a couple steps forward, they'll be right in the mix in the East.
All right. And out west, real quick, Keith Smith, Utah, Houston didn't make any moves. Utah's changed a lot. Denver's kind of stayed pat. Golden State has a big different look. Oklahoma City has no money to speak of. L.A., both L.A. teams are kind of waiting in limbo, but the Lakers are certainly better. The Pelicans going to have a new look. That Western Conference is going to be interesting, but it has been suggested by some that Golden State is in some big trouble. Where do you see Golden State in the Western Conference pecking order?
Yeah, I think they're still probably a playoff team. I'm not going to bet against Steph Curry and Draymond Green, and obviously D'Angelo Russell's a good player in and of himself. They'll get Klay Thompson back some point this season, I believe. But it's going to be a fight for them. They're going to be in the back half of the playoff picture, really fighting for a spot versus kind of cruising into the playoffs on, at the top of the conference. So it's going to be really interesting because those other teams loaded up. I think they read the market correctly of, hey, the Warriors are, because a couple of these teams made these moves before we knew what was fully going to happen. Now, you knew Kevin Durant was probably out of the picture even if he re-signed, but you mentioned it, Utah, Portland, those teams are really going after it. LA, obviously, we know what or the Lakers are out. We know what they're trying to put together. And then I think Houston read it right of, you know what, maybe whoever the anonymous player was that said, let's just run this thing back, why panic? I think they looked at it and said, you know what? The team who's beat us is the Warriors. They're not the Warriors anymore. Why not us? Why can't we be the team who comes out at the top of the conference?
Well, there's a meeting going on right now in Toronto, which is, by the way, seemingly attended by the whole country. I mean, outside of this Toronto hotel, you've got mobs of people just standing out there. So when does Kawhi Leonard make his decision, and do you have a leader in the clubhouse for you?
For the sake of my marriage, I hope he makes it today. So I blow all of 4th of July waiting on this thing, and then I'm on a flight early morning to Las Vegas Summer League on Friday. So I am hoping it is today. My guess is it's either going to be today or tomorrow because I don't think they're going to let drag past the moratorium because wherever he goes, they've got to make a couple other moves to start figuring things out a little bit. So I think there is a chance we get this answer here pretty soon.
All right, we will certainly keep an eye on that. Is there a free agent other than Kawhi still out there that intrigues you?
I think the guy I'm interested to see where he lands is Markieff Morris, who is with the Celtics. He's probably not going to be back there this year. The stars, it's Kawhi, really. Markieff Morris is a guy I think can help a whole bunch of teams. He's interested. And then, obviously, DeMarcus Cousins. We haven't heard really a peep out of anybody being interested on him. I think Cousins played it right when there was no big deal. It's time to wait, let this Kawhi thing settle, and then see where everybody is after that. That's what we're seeing now is things are a little bit on pause until he announces his decision. Then we're going to start seeing the rest of these guys who are, good veteran role players start flying off the board.
Yeah, Markieff Morris, by the way, he signed with Detroit today. And then Boban, he is going to Dallas. So there's a couple of veteran players who made some decisions today. One guy I'm looking, Quinn Cook, he just got renounced, so he's going to be an unrestricted free agent. We'll see where he goes, a guy who has been in that Golden State team. So we'll see if teams start flaunting and throwing money the Golden State way, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what we think is going to happen because they know they can't keep him. So, yep.
All right, Keith Smith at Keith Smith NBA, and he joins us every Wednesday to talk hoops, and the free agent frenzy is just about over. Jimmy Butler's gone, and Al Horford is here. The Sixers have a different look. And you can check it out online at 973ESPN.com for more. Thanks, Keith.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Happy 4th as always, pal.